It was really strange. As soon as we made the decision, every door just kept opening. The house sold. I found work. We came out here. We met people that we really liked. I mean, it was just doors opening.
Right.
And so it just felt really right. We were like, yeah, this is where we're meant to be.
Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 103. If you'd like more information about the podcast, it's all at the website desertladydiaries.com, and I invite you to engage with the guests, with other listeners, or me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries, or on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. If you completed the podcast survey, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to provide your feedback. If you haven't and you still want to complete it, head over to desertladydiaries.com and click on the Take the Survey button in the middle of the homepage. And if you responded that you stopped listening when the Diary Unlocked questions are read, I want you to know that the podcast doesn't end there for you. There is more to hear after I read the 4 questions. So please hang out and listen through. There are usually shout-outs and other things that I mention in bringing the podcast to a proper close for everyone. I'm glad you brought that up, and I apologize for not making that clear when I started doing that at the beginning of the year. And hopefully now you'll listen through all the way to the end. And now, on to this week's interview. Fairly new to the desert, Marie Bobin is jumping right into the community using her expertise as a cultural events producer to shepherd September's big read here in the Morongo Basin. Marie has worked with London's Finborough Theatre, TEDx Culver City, the Getty, and was program specialist and creative producer for one of my favorite places in LA, the Skirball Museum. She is also now serving as co-board chair of Milltree and makes her home with her husband and their 2 dogs, Apollo and Atlas. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. So, what was your first experience with desert?
So first experience with desert was Death Valley, going with some friends, sort of a last minute, let's get out of LA, that's where I was living, trip. And of course it was August and it was 115 degrees and not the best wish. Idea. Yeah, no, certainly not,
Oh my goodness.
But, we saw some beautiful landscapes and would hop out of the car, take pictures, enjoy the sights, and then hop back into the car.
Right.
So that was sort of the first experience for me.
Okay. And I detect a bit of an accent.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm French-American, born in France.
Okay.
Moved to the States when I was a preteen. We moved to California with my family.
Okay.
And sort of made California my home ever since, even though I've traveled. I lived in Thailand for a while, traveled for my master's throughout Europe, lived in London as well, but somehow always came back to California. So this is home.
Well, that explains when I looked up online and I found mariebobin.net and it was in French. And I said, oh my goodness, well, Mrs. Gould would be ashamed of me because that was my 7th and 8th grade French teacher. And there were some things I understood and some things I didn't. So, but it's a lovely little website.
Not mine.
It's not yours?
No.
Oh my gosh, you should go check it out. It's a Marie Bobin, and it's mariebobin.net. But she's got some lovely pictures and drawings and things like that. So.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Not mine. But there are quite a few Marie Bobbins out there. I've noticed, on Facebook when you see sort of other people with your name.
Right.
Yeah. So I've seen like 5 or 6 of them.
Right.
And there's actually also a little town in Haiti called Marie Bobin.
Oh,
Just
isn't that funny?
Random fact.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, fast forward to, 18 months ago, 2 years ago?
2 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You find yourself coming to Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, that was one of those life moments where my husband and I kind of said, okay, we're ready to make a move and do something different. And we're national parks people, so originally we started saying, okay, well, what national park would we like to live near? And I mean, we were looking at Yellowstone and we were sort of looking wide.
Yeah.
And at one point I said, how about Joshua Tree? And my husband looked at me and went, the desert? And so then we started coming out here sort of regularly, and he sort of fell in love with it, just like I was in love with it. And so then we put our house up for sale. We lived in Topanga. And it sold in less than 10 days.
Wow.
And
Talk about, go.
Right. It was that thing of, we both kind of looked at each other and went, oh God, what have we just done? Because we thought it might take 6 months or a year. You never know when you're trying to sell a house, how long it's going to take.
Burying that St. Joseph statue in the front yard sometimes.
And so it was really strange. As soon as we made the decision, every door just kept opening. The house sold. I found work. We came out here. We met people that we really liked. I mean, it was just doors opening.
Right.
And so it just felt really right. We were like, yeah, this is where we're meant to be.
Well, you said that you were already in love with Joshua Tree, so how did that happen?
Weekend trips, coming out. Actually, my husband says we were coming out together, but never staying, longer than a day or two. And that was mostly because of my work. But, just those times, even though we didn't have the time to come out for 2 weeks at a stretch, we loved it. I mean, it's one of those unexplainable things when you're in a place that just feels right to you.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because so many people say that they come out here and there's just a feeling. So was there anything that you could put your finger on, or a combination of things?
I think certainly the quiet. When we lived in Topanga, originally when we bought that house, it was a really quiet neighborhood. And slowly it started getting busier, noisier. But even when it wasn't, it was never as quiet as the desert. And it's that learning to be at peace with yourself when everything stops that was really attractive. Yeah.
How are the dogs enjoying it?
Oh my God, they love it. We're on, it's heaven for them. We're on 2.5 acres, so they get to run around as much as they like, and they love the wildlife, obviously, chasing bunnies every morning and lizards, and they've had to have their own sort of adaptation period. They had to have rattlesnake training and, those things which come with living in the desert and learning what to touch and what not to touch, and learning to stay away from cholla cactuses and all those things.
Yeah, it's an adjustment for everybody, I think. So when you came out, did you already know people who were living here?
No, actually. We knew a couple people who would go out to Palm Springs sort of regularly or who were snowbirds. But we actually didn't know anyone at all in the area. So it was definitely a leap of faith.
Sure. In
terms of finding out, is this a community that we'd feel comfortable in? And we sort of left that to chance. And I always tell people, wow, we got so lucky, because we obviously wanted to be in a rural area, but not all rural areas have the artistic vibrancy and the diverse community that we have here, with climbers and environmentalists and ranchers and retirees and military and veterans and families. And so we sort of, I almost feel like I know more people here, or maybe I see more people here more regularly than I did in LA.
Right.
Because of traffic, and no, I'm not going to meet you tonight because it's going to take an hour for me to cross town, Whereas here it's, hey, do you want to meet at the farmer's market on Saturday morning? Great.
Right. So where did you go to start meeting your people, if you will?
One thing that comes to mind is Kip's book club.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kip is a wealth of local information.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
And so welcoming. Just, he's that. I remember when I went to the first book club meeting, I got there at 7. And he looked at me, and I was the first one there, and he said, "You must be new. Nobody actually arrives at 7. I was like, oh, okay.
Now I know.
And so just really friendly, and can't always make it every month. I also can't read the book every month, but it's not a requirement.
Right.
But I love that book club because they're, it's intergenerational, and so that's really fun. And then the other places we met people were just at events, with Second Saturdays, or just people who come. I work with Eva Soltis at Harrison House, so people who come to events there, and then our neighbors, and so it just sort of different worlds, yeah.
When you say you found work out here, was it with Harrison House then, or was it something else?
I'm a consultant, so I work with Harrison House. I just started working with the Joshua Tree Retreat Center.
Oh, okay.
Terry's wonderful as well over there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm working on the Big Read, which we're producing through Arts Connection, the Arts Council of San Bernardino County.
Right. And then Milltree.
And then Milltree, yeah,
Right.
which I'm on the board of.
Yeah. Which is really wonderful, the things that they put together. And Cheryl was on the podcast a while back and just talked about how she put that all together. And if you haven't heard that, I would encourage you to go listen to her interview.
Oh, I will.
To hear the origin story of Milltree.
Yeah.
It brought me to tears, quite frankly.
Oh,
so
gosh.
be ready. So this interest in programming cultural things, where did that come from for you?
Well, I have a background in performing arts, specifically in producing, really. So I started my career in London, working for a very small sort of pub theater, right?
Oh, cool.
And so I was out there for about 4 years producing shows, and then moved back stateside. And that's when I started mostly working in museums and cultural centers. Producing and programming sort of go hand in hand. And when I was at the Skirball, which is the last place I worked before I moved out to the desert, I started actually as the film programmer. I'd worked for film festivals before, mostly in operations and production. And then from doing the film series, I sort of grew to, we relaunched theater at the Skirball with a theater series. And then it sort of went from there. So I became the creative producer for the programming department.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I love that place. I'm also getting emotional about it. There's something about what they do there that just, I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. It's like loving the desert. You can't explain it.
Yeah.
But the programming just really hits home. And I don't know whether it's because it's social justice and cultural, and that's something that is really meaningful to me. But the exhibits, I never really got through the standing exhibits that are there all the time.
Right.
I don't know what you call those. Are they like legacy exhibits?
They're
or
permanent.
Permanent,
Yeah.
okay. Because the stuff that came through every couple of months was just so good. The Bill Graham and the Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And there was, what's that other one? Oh, the Manzanar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was there for that.
Just so, so good. I don't know what it is about the place, but...
Well, you know, I think part of it comes from people who work at the Skirball are true believers. They believe in the mission, and that's sort of in every department, from exhibitions to programs to education, and that comes through.
I was just going to say, it totally does.
You know, they're not just saying, let's do this exhibition because it's popular. There's actually... It's because it's meaningful and because it's a way to deal with history. And
that we're not usually very good at doing here in this place. Yeah.
And shining light on social justice issues that are important.
Yeah.
And so I think what you're feeling sort of stems from there.
Yeah. It's wonderful. And the program that they do every year with the report that comes out on women and girls from, is it Mount St. Mary's?
Program?
Is it once a year? I think it's once a year.
Is it an educational program?
No, it's like a one day. They bring people out. I guess there's a segment of Mount St. Mary's, the women's school, that does an annual report on the status of women and girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I don't know well about it, is because I think technically that's a private event.
So they just bring it into the space.
Yeah.
Okay. But it just seems to fit perfectly.
Right.
I don't know.
Which is probably why they chose the Skirball as a location.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about, now you're out here and you've gotten involved in, we said Milltree and the Retreat Center and Harrison House. And now you're ramping up to this big read. There was a grant from the National Endowment of the Arts, and they selected 75 cities or towns to participate. How did you get involved in that? And talk about what's coming up for everyone. It's exciting. And thank you for the book.
You're welcome.
I just finished it last night.
Oh, I want to hear your thoughts. So how did I get involved? Well, basically when I arrived as a producer, when you move somewhere new and you look at the programming that's sort of happening, you always have ideas of things that you want to do. And when I came out here, one of the things that dawned on me early on was, wow, there are a lot of amazing organizations out here that are already doing amazing programs. And so that's when I started thinking, well, instead of me creating something new, how do I use my skills to support the organizations that are already here and that are already doing great work? I knew about the Big Read Grant as also a grant proposal writer. And
that's a great skill to have here. You'll be busy.
I normally don't tell people. Don't tell anyone.
Shh. We won't.
So I knew about the Big Read, and I basically, at one point I went, wait, this is the vehicle. This is the vehicle that will allow all of these organizations that are already out here to work together under one banner to promote literacy, to promote the arts, to build community. And so I just, from there, started approaching various people. One of the first people I talked to was Rich Sos from Choya Needles.
Yeah.
Who's wonderful. And if you haven't been to their monthly poetry readings, you should go.
Yes, absolutely.
Rich was very supportive right away. And then I went and met John Paul at Space Cowboy, and so was he. And so basically, Jenny Kane and I, Jenny Kane, who's the executive director of Arts Connection, had basically talked about the Big Read and, about going for this grant. And when I saw sort of the community support behind it, we sort of said, yep, let's do this. That's because awesome. Everybody wants to jump on board. Not every Big Read grantee selects the same book. So there was a book selection that needed to be done prior to the application being sent out. And the NEA provides a list of 30 titles.
Oh, okay.
So you have to pick from one of those 30 titles.
Did you read all 30 titles?
No.
Okay, just wondering.
I wish I had, but
I know, that would be my life.
Yeah.
Bring me books. I'll just stay here and read them.
And no, so I felt like I narrowed it down based on thinking about this community and what some of the driving questions based on the themes of the novel we'd be selecting, what would speak to this community, and which book would really bring in people from all different walks of desert life. Earlier when I was saying the ranchers, the environmentalists, the military, it was important to me that we not just be speaking to the arts community, but that we be speaking to the entire Morongo Basin community. And so that's why I selected Station 11, because the themes in there of survival, legacy, community really sort of speaks to a cross-section of people out here. And that was noticeable when I started approaching organizations where organizations like the Mojave Desert Land Trust said, yes, we want to participate because we want to have a conversation about environmental legacy. And so that really told me, this was the right book. And the Combat Center Library on base is participating as well.
Oh,
so
great.
That'll be great. So that's how we picked Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Yeah.
It's good. I really enjoyed it.
Good.
Yeah. So the big kickoff for the Big Read is
September 7th.
Okay.
Starts at 9 a.m. goes till 1 p.m. And basically, it's sort of a community fair type of event and celebration. It's free. All of our programs are free.
And it's at Mojave Desert Land Trust.
It's at Mojave Desert Land Trust. And you can pick up, we'll be giving out free copies of the book. And then all of our 20-plus partners will be there with information about their programs. And some of them will be doing demos if they can.
Oh, neat.
There'll be the Big Read Art Capsule, which is Tumbleweed Art Gallery's exhibition for the Big Read.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll have Desert Oracle readings, which Mary Addison Hackett is doing as part of the Joshua Tree National Park Council for the Arts. Mm-hmm. Shadow Mountain Band will be playing, so that's exciting because they're an awesome local band, which we have many of.
The Sunday Band?
The Sunday Band, yeah.
At Pappy and Harriet's.
So we love them. They're going to be great. And then we'll have a zine-making workshop, several zine-making workshops, actually. They're drop-in that are going to be led by Jillian Sandell. Mm-hmm. And then we'll have art-making activities. Scrap Gallery is coming, as well as Spark Growth, which is a literacy organization out here in the desert that's actually going to bring the book into classrooms. They selected, well, they're not bringing Station 11 because it's not really for the young ones, but they helped us select a Little Read book.
Oh, neat.
And so they're going to do some of the workshop activities at the kickoff as well. So it'll be really fun for kids as well as for adults. It's sort of an all ages kind of community fair.
The way that you're describing it definitely runs in themes of the book, which I don't want to talk too much about on here in case you're listening and you want to read it. I don't want to, what do they call that?
Give away the...
Yeah, there's a name for it. People always put it on Facebook like an alert. Like if you don't want to hear...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
There we go.
I just really won't talk about it at all until we shut the mic off. So we have 20-plus organizations involved in this. What are some of, besides the kickoff with all of that, I mean, I'm exhausted just listening to what's going to be happening that day, so I know I need to be ready with a good night's sleep. What other kind of things are happening around the basin for this?
So basically we have exhibitions, we have workshops, we have community readings, we have traditional book discussions, we also have performances. So every organization sort of approached the book from their own angle, if you will. Okay. So some of the exhibitions, for example, the Yucca Valley Visual and Performing Arts Center is going to have an exhibition called Concourse C, which will make sense when you read the book.
It makes sense to me.
And for that, it's almost an exhibition in process or in progress because Kathy Allen, who's an assemblage artist, is going to be building a shelter and inviting the community to come in for free workshops where they can participate in assemblage art making.
Oh, cool.
And Carol Newman, who has a collection of desert debris, electronic desert debris, is going to use that to create the Morongo Basin Museum of Civilization.
Oh,
and
nice.
so those two things will be together at the Yucca Valley Visual and Performing Arts Center.
Wonderful.
And then Beatnik Lounge is going more post-apocalyptic and focusing on that angle.
Well, this is great.
Yeah.
This is really great.
It's really, I have to say, it's a testament to how strong this community is and how much people here are willing to sort of embrace and support good ideas like literacy and the arts.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk a little bit about, you mentioned two organizations that I'd never heard of before, Spark Growth, and something else.
And Scrap Gallery.
Right.
Spark Growth is a literacy organization that, I don't want to quote it wrong, but I want to say they started about 2 years ago in the Morongo Basin, and they go into Morongo Basin elementary schools and basically do reading programs and then do hands-on arts activities based on the readings. And they service grades K through 6, and they also help students and their parents sort of really get involved and help with after-school activities as well. And so I think when they started, they were servicing 2 schools, and soon they'll be servicing 10 or 12.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. So they're a really great organization, and the women who run it, sort of 3 or 4 generations of Morongo Basin women, all in education, and so they're the perfect people to really run this. Yeah. And as you know, our schools need a lot of help, so
absolutely.
So Spark Growth is a great sort of complement to the regular curriculum.
Right. Oh, that's great that they're doing that. Yeah.
And then Scrap Gallery is actually based in the low desert. They call themselves a museum for the environment. And so they do art activities all with repurposed materials. And so what they're doing for us at the kickoff is that they're creating art packets completely made of discarded materials.
Oh, wow.
And so that obviously is in line with the themes of the book as well.
Right.
You know, make art with what you have.
Right. Yeah.
And so turning trash into
treasure.
Art. Yeah. Yes, that's good. Trash into treasure.
I am so glad to meet you because we haven't met yet. So this has been awesome. And thank you for taking the time to come on and talk about this, and for everything that you're doing to lead the charge on this. Somebody has to get it all together and manage it, and that's great that you're doing that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Before you go, I would love to have you select 4 numbers between 1 and 50 for my Patreon supporters. So I have some material for Diary Unlocked for them. If you're unfamiliar with Diary Unlocked, this is where our guest selects 4 numbers between 1 and 50, and the answers to those questions are available on Patreon. And if you're unfamiliar with Patreon, go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support tab, and the next thing that comes up will tell you all about Patreon and how you can sign up to get this content. Your numbers, please.
1, 6, 2, 9.
That's it. Is that the end of your phone number or something? Okay, so you find a lottery ticket that ends up winning $10 million. What do you do? What's the last thing you watched on TV, and why did you watch it? We don't get that one very often, so thank you. What do you think about when you're alone in your car? And what keeps you up at night? So if you would like to hear Marie's answers to those questions, head over to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and sign up to be a patron. And I want to thank my current Patreon supporters who are so generous. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
If you're interested in any of the events for the big read that Marie has so graciously orchestrated, the entire schedule is available to view and to download at the website artsconnectionnetwork.org. That's artsconnectionnetwork.org. Or you can go to Facebook and search NEA for National Endowment of the Arts, Big Read Morongo Basin. Join their page, like their page, and just follow all the events that are coming up in September. I have shout-outs this week to Troy from San Diego for signing up to be a patron on Patreon. Thank you so much, Troy. And to Susan for signing up for the weekly newsletter. Thanks, Susan. Again, if you would be so kind as to take the listener survey, please go to desertladydiaries.com and click on the Take the Survey button. It will be available for another couple of weeks and will take you less than 10 minutes to complete, I promise. I look forward to receiving your feedback. Catherine Svala from episode 49 lives here in Joshua Tree and is here to tell you a bit about her podcast, Myth Matters.
Are you looking for a new way to think and transform? Tune into Myth Matters, a bi-weekly podcast of storytelling and conversation about mythology and why it's important to life today. Find a more creative way to live. Learn more at mythicmojo.com and keep the mystery in your life alive.
See you next week. Thanks so much for listening.